Welcome back. In previous session we have understood ephemeral nature of container, and because of this any container if crashed, restart or stopped, it completely lost information and data of previous state. We also looked into what are the solution, and we seen there is two solution. One is the bind mount and another is docker volume. In this session we are going to understand what is bind mount and how this make data persistent for the container. So bind mount is a mechanism that allow containers to access a specific directory on the host machine. Yes, now we know when we have the host, right? And on this host we have container is running. So regardless of if this container goes down or new container comes, then it will come on this host, right? So if this container somehow able to access any directory on this container, then if it crashed, new container come again. If we are able to map or bind this folder to this container, so this become persistent for these containers, right? So this is what bind mount do. So what bind mount do? Bind mount basically allow a container to access a specific directory on the host machine. So if we have this host machine, right, and if let's say we have this directory and here we have some folder, so this allow this container to access this folder. So this is called bind mount. Now what happen when a container directly mapped or tied to access a specific folder within the host? So if there's any changes in this directory folder, then it's immediately visible inside the container. And otherwise, if this again same any changes done inside the container, again this is immediately available on the host. So in a way if you see, so this container don't own any data, it simply link a existing location on the host machine. Now you will be thinking how it will work. Now let's understand that. So this is very simple. So to make a bind mount works, we just pass a specific argument when we create a container. So when we run a container, what we do? We do docker run, then we pass the image name, correct, and also -t. So here what we are doing, we are passing a argument called -v. So this is volume, and then we are here specifying the folder location, directory location at the host machine. You see host path, and this host path will be mapped to where inside the container at the certain directory, right? So here this is container path. It's very simple. So when we create a container, then we use a specific argument called v, means volume, then we map host path on our container, host path on our container, to the container path inside our container. So if there is some path here on the container, then this is host path on the container. So we just map these together. So if there is any changes happening, let me change color of my pencil. So if any changes happening over here, this will also reflect over here. If any changes happening inside the container, then it also get reflect over here, because this is directly mapped to each other. This is very simple. Now again I have a very simple example over here. So what we are doing here, we are running a NGINX container. So we are using NGINX image. Then on the host machine we are creating a folder called var log nginx. Then inside the container we are mapping this location. So anything if container generating at this location var log nginx, so this will be available here. Okay, so this is the host machine path, this is the container machine path. This is I'm going to show you practically in the next session. I have created a two scenario. I think no, next session I'm going to again talk about the Docker volume. Then I have a separate session where I will do this practically and we will test it. But now there's one small problem here. So what happened when we use the bind mount? It means, as I said, if this is the host machine and you have the container and this is the directory and this is the directory inside the container, then container able to write this data and even is able to read data from here. So this could be some security problem, right? If let's say if container get compromised, means it's also allowing hacker to access the file on the host machine. So this is not good practice. But to solve this problem, there is the way we can only allow the read access. So means we have the two mode. One is the read only, another is the read write mode. So bad default, when in the previous example when you have seen, so bad default when we pass the volume, then host path and container path, then it's get access of both read and write between the container and host. But if some reason you just want the read only access, then we need to pass this read only additional configuration over here. So if this is, let me delete it, so this is our host path, this is container path, then we are saying, hey, on the host machine container only can read the data, so read only, and this is our image. Okay, so again this is important from the security perspective. If needed, we can achieve that. Now let's look into what are some important features of the bind mount, and there's also some limitations. We'll look into that. So let's go one by one. So first feature is direct access of the host file, right? So if you want to access some file, some data directly from the host file, so this is very good solution. So container can access existing directories from the host machine without any issues. Now next good good example could be real-time data sharing. So let's say on your host machine there is some data coming from somewhere, and those data you want to access instantly inside the container, right? Or maybe vice versa. If some data is getting generated inside the container and that data you want to make available on the host machine, so bind mounts is a really good solution. On top of that, when we use bind mount, then we don't need to do any specific storage management. So it's very simple, just we are mapping our host machine directory inside the container, and that's all. Again, from the security perspective, we already understood we can also have only read only access if you don't want to allow container to write on the host machine. Perfect. So these are some important features, and based on this use case, you can use it. But along with that, there is also some limitation that we should be aware is. First is depends on the host machine file, right? Now we know when we create a container, now container is portable, correct? Now this container is running on the this host. Tomorrow this will go on the different host. Maybe it will go on the different environment. Then what about this file, right? This directory is specific to the host, right? So this is the one problem. If you use the bind mount, then this make the container less portable, right? And again, we already understood is also create the securities issue because we are allowing a container to modify, means write data on the host. So this is not good practice because we want to make sure all containers, right, this should be isolated. But again, there's some benefit, there's some issues as well. So that's something we should keep in mind when to use what. Now, another problem is it's required the absolute path. We have seen, right? We need to specify which path this is going to access on the host machine. And Again, you have to do that. But if you don't want to do that, we have the other solution with the Docker volume that we are going to understand in next session. So here pretty much I wanted to explain you what is the bind mounts, how this works, and what are some different use case, and also what are some limitations. In next session we are going to understand Docker volume, and after that I will do a hands-on session where I will do and explain both practically, means mind or bind mounts and the Docker volume. Well, so thank you so much. See you in the next session.